Hey guys, so today should be Wednesday. We're going to continue on that same section on section 3. You guys have read it before, and we did start it yesterday on Tuesday, just looking at just the American people today. So we did start with the census. Well, we actually started with a bell ringer, just looking at some measurements of the country. Basically to see, where are we doing great, where are we number one, where are we top five, and what things are we really lacking on, or at least comparatively to maybe other countries. And it's always important to look at these numbers so we can see what we can fix and see what we're doing well. Basically, it's perfect for problem solving. So we looked at our objectives quick from yesterday, and it was, what is the census? Why is it even important? How and why populations grow and change. So what are some things that we can see in recent years? And we'll look at that today. And as a quick review for you, we just looked at the census, which is historically just a collection of information on our population. A lot of demographic information, demographics being different categories such as ethnic, background, occupation, religion, family size, and so on. I did give you a couple websites, whether it was census.gov to actually check it out if you wanted to see what a questionnaire looks like, and even CIA.gov, which has the World Factbook, and this is super cool to look at. Even more than just what the census does, but a ton of different information about each country, and all this data we can use to, again, compare, see where we're doing great, see where we're failing, so we can identify problems and offer some solutions. So super cool. All right, now let's get into it. Okay, now let's look at how the population grows. This should hopefully be common sense, but it can grow in three ways. The first being natural increase. So are we having more people born than dying, essentially? That's the number. I hope this is an easy one to conceptualize. Typically, the birth rate and death rate are both based on per thousand. So if you were to go look at, let's say, CIA World Factbook, that's probably what it's based on. But again, if we're having more people born than are dying each year, then our population is increasing. And then you could say, the opposite for the reverse in those numbers. We have more people dying than being born, and our population is going down. Okay. So the second way a population can grow is adding territory. So you have to think our entire history, essentially, as a country is expanding. Whether we're starting at the East Coast, expanding past the Ohio, whether we're getting Florida, whether we're getting the Louisiana Purchase or if we're winning half of Mexico, whether we're buying Alaska or taking Hawaii and everything else acquired during the Spanish-American War. This is all part of our long history of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny, a term coined basically meaning God chose our people, and he wanted us to expand and win the land and this and that, and that's kind of like one of the trademarks to our history. Whether you believe it or not, this has been the idea, especially even when we get Pilgrims, Puritans, when you have disease wiping out estimates as high as 90% of the indigenous people here. They start to believe it. The Christians of our nation start to believe it, and so do the natives. In fact, early in on our history, during the late 1600s, you get a lot of natives that actually convert to Christianity. Because when you see just disease wipe out entire villages and tribes, that is kind of eye-opening. You start to believe it too. You start to think, did their God actually choose them? So people switch. Some people just turn to alcohol or suicide. Some people join other tribes and they, go on. But, this is as I said before, a trademark to our entire nation, because we've been expanding. Maybe the moon's next. We'll see. But this is a way that we grow our population because everybody there then becomes, ours. The last way our population can grow is immigration. So I think I went over some numbers last section, but our population would grow from push and pull factors of different immigrants. An immigrant being somebody that would leave their nation to come to ours. And I believe I gave you some examples, so I did scroll back a little bit to the last section. Sorry about that, guys. Some push factors being like, maybe racism, or let's say it's a potato famine or a civil war. Like that's something that's going to push you out of your nation. A pull factor being something awesome, like let's say you have the First Amendment rights or maybe Second Amendment rights. Our Bill of Rights is pretty awesome. So these are pull factors that might bring somebody in. Now with immigrants, some of the data, I don't think I did share this with you guys before, but you can look at some of the information about who is here. So if you have a population of around 330 million, some estimates go as high as 50 million that are immigrants. Now you can take a look at this. This is from the Pew Research data. They're nonpartisan. It's not like a left or right thing, but this is what they say the data is, and they're very credible. They've been around long enough. So take that for how you want. But let me move back down. Where were we? You guys can't see what I'm looking at, but so those are the three ways that we can grow our population. Natural increase, more people are being born than dying. Adding territory, let's say tomorrow we take Greenland or Canada, well, their population becomes ours and our population grows. And immigration, whatever, our Congress and executive agencies and presidents sign off on together, because they work together for these things, then they can determine how many immigrants can come in and in which ways, right? Because there's different, visas, and then how can they get the green card and so on. How many and who are we letting in? So they determine that, and that's how we grow our population. Now let's keep going with how the population has changed, at least in recent years. I know I put throughout time, but I'm talking about recent years. Now let's start by looking at the first one with just households. The main points being that divorce is pretty darn high and that populations have less children. Now, just to look at the first one, well, divorce is pretty much a 50-50 chance for each marriage. Now, that's on average, and if you know how statistics work, it's not like you yourself individually have 50-50% chance. But when we look at the entirety of the population of married people, 50% get a divorce. So that's just a reality we have. Take that for, what it is. And what we might be able to do with that information is say, why is this happening? Why is 50% of our marriages getting a divorce? Should those people be getting married? Are they marrying the wrong people? Is it that they're not well matched? Is it that we're living longer and growing older and maybe that's not something they want to do their entire lives? So when we look at the census data, remember the whole point is to solve problems. So I would think most times, or at least many times, divorce is a problem, right? It's not too great for people most times, or again, maybe I'll just say many times because I don't actually know. Maybe, it is rightfully so, you should get a divorce. But let's just say for now that it can be a problem. So this is something that we can investigate more, find out some of the factors, and see, based on the census, if we can maybe solve that or think about it at least and keep it in mind. Okay, that's the whole point of the census. Where are we doing great? Where are we failing? I would say this is probably a fail. The other one is less children. I would say this is a fail, but some people, they don't like kids, to each its own. Now, couples are having less and less children, and even just having one one-child household is on the rise substantially. And this contrasts sharply when we look 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, when you're having 5+ kids. Now it's more like one, maybe two. So is that an issue? Is it not? What does that say about us and our generation? And is that something good? Is that good for us? Is that bad? So it's just more data for us to see how our population changed. The next change I want to look at is women's roles. More and more, and definitely more than ever in our country, women have opportunities to work and become educated. In fact, more women are going to college than men. At no point in history have more women worked in our country. And this is super important. You have to even think as early as about 100 years ago, we can still look at some journals, whether it's from some prestigious schools or medical journals, that it was, or at least there was a movement, however big it is, I'm not sure, but they would teach in some schools that, women shouldn't be doing these things, that it could be harmful for them. They need to be in the household, they need to take care of the families, or it could, corrupt society, your neighborhood, your marriage, and so on. And even education, it might not be good for them. They shouldn't be thinking that hard. Now, you can say, are people that dopey back then? I'm not positive. I can show you some journals, medical journals, magazines, and like actual scholarship where doctors would teach this stuff. Now, how widely believed it was, I'm not sure. I'd have to get like a Gallup poll or something. But a reality is, at some point, and not that long ago, people truly believed that women should not even go to college. Now, there is one controversy to make this video a little saucy for you guys: the gender wage gap. Women don't make as much as men per dollar. But now, this has somewhat been debunked. You have to ask, maybe in private sectors this happens, but in public sectors, I believe this would be illegal. If you're going to be a teacher or an administrator or a police officer, the pay scale is all pretty much the same. Now, I could be wrong, and if you'd like to comment and correct me, that would actually be awesome, because I don't want to teach anything wrong to you guys. So let me know what you think about the gender wage gap. One person I can point to that tries to explain it is a Professor Jordan Peterson, and he talks about other factors that they didn't include in the gender wage gap, saying that, women don't make as much money as men. But he would also argue that, well, men work longer, they work more, they have more dangerous jobs, and women also are by nature more nurturing. I don't know if that's true across the board. If you ever saw Ronda Rousey, she'd knock your head off. But I do believe, women, they are nurturing because they kind of have to be. A lot of times they're a baby's lifeline. That's not to say like dads aren't either, because dads are. I'm a dad. I'll do anything for my child. But he tries to explain it, if you look at the job numbers, more times than not, that men pick different jobs that have to do with things, not really people. So men might pick like pharmacy or math engineering, computer engineering, chemical engineering, petroleum engineering, aerospace engineering, while he argues that women would pick, something like human services, psychology, education, theology, social work. So basically saying, maybe they're nurses, but maybe they're social workers or teachers. There you go, teachers. That's a girl job, right? Of course. So these, when you look at the pay scales, are, completely different. So is that true? Is that not? Is that just trying to basically debunk a debunk? I don't know. Let me know what you think in comments. Gender wage gap, real, fake? Let me know. Another change that we have is that we are growing older and older. The old census joke goes for 2020 that 120 is the new 100. We're having more and more centennials. In fact, in the last 5 years, we've had 72,000 people that were 100 years old or older in the US. Now, question for you guys to think about, well, does this maybe contribute to divorce? Do people get sick of each other after 80 years? Or how about 100 years, or whatever? I don't know. And how about overpopulation? Is that a thing? You have the Thomas Malthusian nightmare. At some point, we will run out of resources. Well, aren't older people kind of take a chunk of what we spend in the U.S. for, not free handouts because they paid their dues, they paid their taxes and so on, but that's pretty much when people think of welfare or quote-unquote free handouts, most of that's going towards the old. So if we have more and more of these people, should we raise the retirement age? Can we get them some sort of job? Can we get them some sort of value so they, love life? Because based on, again, polling, most people think 90 years old is the ideal age, and they don't want to live to be 100 or 120. So, we have some issues that, again, using the census data, we might have to figure out later. And the census is perfect for figuring out problems and coming up with solutions. So, is this a problem? Is it not? Well, we're going to have to deal with it, and it'll be your tax dollars. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that ethical? Well, I don't know. Let me know what you think in comments. And the last change I have in our population in recent years is just that our country is much more diverse ethically than it ever has been before. I don't have too much to say on this or too many controversies. I'm sure some people, might not like this, but I would think the majority of people would like this. We get all the, we're a country of immigrants. We get all the best things from each other, right? Sometimes we inherit the bad things from all of our different groups as well. But I would think that diversity does make us better and more honest. We are better at science. We're better at history, and it expands our culture, our worldview. I don't see too many disadvantages of this, and I'm not really sure there's many controversies besides maybe a fringe of people that might be like xenophobic or something. But what Nat Geo predicts we will look like in 2050, as if they actually knew. But they had a whole magazine article about this, just saying that more and more we're going to all be blended together. So it wouldn't be unusual, or maybe it would be unusual to have people just be just one group. And that's kind of what they were getting at. Now, is that true? Is it not true? I mean, I think that's a lot of speculation from Nat Geo. Is that bad? I mean, I guess if that's what you want, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it or anything controversial. But I just wanted to share that from Nat Geo to you guys. I do also want to look at a couple graphs quick. Remember, the first population change that we looked at was just that people are getting divorced more and they're having less kids. So here's data just looking at the years 1960 to 2014, just looking at two-parent households versus one parent and no parent. You don't necessarily need kids, but here's another graph. This next graph I just included quick to just show like global population by age, but I just wanted to show how more and more we are getting older people. This obviously doesn't have to do with the U.S. Census and our population, but will it be a problem? This is why I brought up Thomas Malthus and the Malthusian Nightmare. What do we do in the U.S. and in the globe? We're going to have to figure out how do we handle people 65 and older? Do we have to raise like the retirement? How can we get them to live successful and valued and fulfilled lives? And how will we, pay for it? So we will have issues probably at some point in your life. Now, another graph I wanted to show you just kind of went over the different diversity in our nation. In one aspect being religious diversity. Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? If you can take a look just within a few years, right? We get more and more non-religious people. Now, a couple questions. Why is that? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Is there an advantage to being not religious? Or is there an advantage of being Christian or something else? Let's say Jewish. Do they eat healthier food or care more about family time or taking a day of rest? Do they read more? Do you know what I mean? There's different questions we have to ask. And is this a problem? Or is it a good thing, bad thing? We have to figure that out. And I have one more graph to show you about diversity. I did not fact check it. It does come from a law firm website, so I would hope that it is accurate. But it just shows the different diversity and different numbers of what does our population actually look like. Well, it's mostly white, as you guys could probably predict. About 18% Hispanic, almost 6% Asian, just over 1% Native or Alaskan Native, and just under 14% Black. So I already showed you before what Nat Geo says, and I want to move on to the last topic that we're going to talk about today. Sorry, the video is longer than I thought, but we're going to look at the population, how we've kind of moved again in, I can't say recent years, but let's say recent decades. Well, first, we've migrated to cities. I know our book covers it that we have giant population moving to cities, but as far as I can tell, it's kind of always been this way throughout history and cross-culturally. Whether we're talking about London or whether we're talking about India, whether we're talking about the US, wherever, it always seems like cities become these places where people go and they try to find opportunities and jobs, and they're overcrowded and they're often associated with a negative connotation because maybe there's too many people or this and that, or the living conditions are poor and so on. As far as I can tell, it's kind of always been that way. but your book covers it, basically 1830s, or you have the Industrial Revolution, the early Industrial Revolution. We're starting to manufacture and create all these things. Technology is booming like crazy. The U.S. is becoming like a world manufacturer, a world producer, a world trader. If you look today, if you look at items around you on the table or the desk or the bed, whatever you're watching this video from, probably if you grab something, it's probably made from China, right? Well, back then, mid 1800s, late 1800s, even early 1900s, it's more like opposite day. Everything's coming from the US. So at that time, we have a giant move to cities where they become, or I guess droves of people go there. So again, definitely has a negative connotation associated with it, whether it's poor conditions, disease, crime, fires, noise, sweatshops, you name it. So this is the move in recent decades, but I feel like it's always been that way. The other one's migration to suburbs. Now this seems like a more recent one. Let me show you some images about the suburbs as I talk about it. I was going to show you these before, just about the cities. These are some famous photos of the cities. You can look like things are, falling apart. There's not really a code or regulations, and if there is, none of it's being enforced. So pretty hideous conditions. Let me look and find the suburbs. Anyway, with these conditions, people are exposing the truth. Muckrakers, this is a super cool time period when we do have to move to cities. Muckrakers are awesome if you learned about them before in your history classes, but eventually we'll get to them. I'm just going to skip it for this video. But suburbs. So contrast again with the city. These are the people that would move outside of the city, just far enough away to be in their own little area. This is where you think of like the white picket fence family, son and a daughter playing with a ball in the yard, the perfect family. But the suburb history is a lot weirder than that, at least in some cases. In some cases, you get what they call in history white flight, where in the cities, especially after Reconstruction, especially in other times in our history, when you get other people moving into the cities, you name the group, you get a lot of people moving out because they want to be left alone, or they associate that group with violence or whatever else. So we do have some examples of this. There's actually a documentary about Levittown, Pennsylvania, and different Levitt towns because it was their policy not to allow certain people in. The first family was a black family, I think in the late 50s, maybe early 60s, the Myers family. He'd be the first one to challenge that, and they had things thrown out the window, they're harassed, there's a big protest. So some of these things aren't that long ago to allow people, for instance, to live in certain neighborhoods. So in the 1960s, when you have 1/3 of these people moving to suburbs, well, that's huge, and it totally impacts our entire society. It impacts cities. You have to think there's a huge tax base that leaves, money's leaving, and that hurts cities. Whether they're funding schools or police or whatever. So in these suburbs, they would have different schools and many times better schools because taxes would be based off their income. So last point I wanted to make about the population on the move is the migration to the Sun Belt. So for most of our history, a large portion of the population lived like in northeast of the U.S. Okay, it makes sense, right? That's where most of our ancestors and founders of the nation would start, right? But in around the 1950s, a large population starts to move out of these areas. Let's say even Pennsylvania, and they want to go to the Midwest or the South, to basically the warmer states. So has a milder climate, much more sun, and this seems to be the move in recent decades. Now that is all I have for you. I do apologize, the video went a little bit longer than I thought, but that's fine, and we're done, and we're actually done with chapter 1. So we made it through the first chapter. We can just test you on it and have your first project. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope Google Classroom's getting better for you. I told you before, I'm still working on the grades, and you will have them in the next few days because I have to get them done. That's when progress reports are due. So keep it up, keep participating, keep commenting on the stream, keep commenting on each other. It's awesome to basically see like a forum happening, and it's awesome to see what you guys think. So keep that up. Now for the review questions, which I'm going to have a Google form posted for you to complete them in, describe why the census is important. Explain how and why populations grow and change. So how do we get a bigger population? We had a whole slide on it. And then what are some of the changes we've had in the US population over, I put the last years, like over the years, but think decades. Like we're talking like, 1950s, 60s, and so on. So, all right. Thanks for watching. Again, I hope it wasn't too boring. I hope you enjoyed it and learned. Let me know if you have any questions. If you want to comment on anything, like why are people moving there, or what about city life? What is white flight? What is redlining? Is there a racist history around suburbs, or is that just liberal stuff? How about cities? What were these Democrat run or blah blah blah? Whatever, you fill in the gap. Is Nat Geo fake news? Whatever you guys want. Anything and everything. Just always be respectful. I'm always willing to talk about both sides, and I'm always willing to try to challenge you guys. So should be a good one. Comment, tell me what you think, and let's have a good conversation. All right, see you guys. Bye.